Okay guys, I'm not kidding when I tell you, but this build is no joke. This is probably one of the most effective ad clearing builds on a Warlock whilst maintaining fairly good DPS, and not just that, you'll get fast abilities if not instant, and supercharged grenades that are so powerful it tears through match game shields that aren't even matched. There is a lot more to this build, like infinite special ammo and a combination of different mods, weapon and gear you can mix with to create a build variant that suits you using the initial setup. We'll get to that shortly, but guys, before we start, this video is sponsored by Awaya. So if you do want to make your weapons and armor look good with new Eververse cosmetics, why not go check them out for some cheap silver and use my code DIVIDE at checkout for a discount. Now guys, no more delay, let's build. Rate, comment, sub, share, and of course, intro. Now if you missed my previous builds for the Hunter, or you want to see more builds like this, I do create them every week, and there is a playlist link below for all these new builds in Destiny 2. Also there are timestamps below if you do want to skip ahead to the build setup or other parts of the video, but this build guide will be detailed a little bit more than usual, as we are covering a few extra things. So TLDR, this build is a Warlock Void build specifically, and we will be using a Nova Warp, along with the new linear fusion rifle for effective ad clearing. You will tear through ads regardless of the minor and major ad difficulty, and you will deal a reasonable amount of DPS to those tougher bosses and champions. But the way this build works is you'll be running around spawning void elemental wells from multiple sources, allowing you to become Charge of Light, and then those Charge of Light stacks will help you spawn special ammo, basically giving you infinite ammo for your fusion rifles, and you'll then use that fusion rifle to generate those telemetry patterns from marked targets, and picking those up will give you that ability energy back and give you increased damage when you pick up 3. Not only that, but when you're getting kills with that fusion rifle, you'll also be giving yourself death throws, which then makes your supercharged grenade deal even more damage when you throw it. But on top of this, you'll also gain grenade energy back each time, and also at the same time, if you're using that grenade to kill ads, you will spawn more elemental wells, and just repeat the process over and over, which is a pretty OP build with the amount of stuff there is to it, and the different combination of mods and exotics you can use too. Now I took this into a Legend Lost sector and just hammered through ads with that linear fusion rifle, which is also what makes the build OP, because it just tears through those ads, even those difficult ones. Now I did have a 50% damage buff because of the Void Burn in the Lost sector, but at the same time I didn't have the Particle Deconstruction Mod, which makes up for 40% extra damage on top. And if you also include the Font of Might, which stacks, you can have an additional 25% damage buff as well, which is kind of crazy if you're doing activities like this that have a burn modifier. So this build is perfect for those activities that do have a lot of void shields or a void burn modifier. So going over the setup of this build, let's take a look at the loadout. Your kinetic weapon would ideally be an auto rifle if barrier champions are present, so I'd recommend a Chroma Rush, which you can get from the seasonal override activity. But if there's no anti-barrier champions, use a bow instead if there's overloads. If there's no champions at all, then use anything you want. Now the energy weapon you'll be using is the new Lorentz Driver Exotic linear fusion rifle, but I'll give you alternative weapons to use later if you don't have or don't want to use this. And then for that heavy weapon, you will use anything, but preferably a void weapon to support the build even more. Now briefly looking over the Lorentz Driver, it is an exotic linear fusion rifle, which you can get from the season pass, and this comes with a unique exotic trait, where the weapon marks targets with an automated targeting system. Final blows on marked targets generate a telemetry pattern. Picking up a telemetry pattern grants bonus ability energy, and collecting 3 without dying grants bonus weapon damage to this weapon for a long duration. You can pick up 3 telemetry patterns, which will give you that buff for increased DPS, and that buff will last 30 seconds, starting from the 3rd one that you pick up. The DPS increase is 50%, which is crazy, and considering you get 30 seconds with it as well, gives you enough time for a good DPS phase in whatever activity you're playing. Now this isn't a full weapon breakdown video, so I'm not going to go into the full numbers in this video, but the next thing that makes this weapon good for the build is how amazing it is with ad clearing, as it comes with a new perk that pulls enemies in on precision kills and causes an explosion, and if you have the catalyst you can trigger that perk with non-precision final blows. So we've got or should have an understanding of how this weapon works, which is really important for the build, because we will be pairing it with Verity's Brow, where those energy kills will boost our grenade damage, and we'll get into this exotic shortly along with the alternative Nezarec Sin. But going into the subclass, we are a middle tree Nova Warp, Now you can and probably should use the bottom tree Voidwalker Nova Bomb with the Devourer if you are going into harder activities. But for this build specifically, I wanted to make use of the Nova Warp and the Supernova, as they both got a huge damage buff this season, which now makes it useful in endgame content like master activities. So Nova Warp got a 73% damage increase on PvE enemies, and handheld Supernova for a 100% increase, which is crazy because it can tear through a single target with the opposite match game shield pretty easily, or any tough ad that just runs up to you. But back to the super, this does come with Atomic Breach, Dark Matter, where void ability kills grant health, melee, grenade and class energy, which is pretty good, and of course that handheld Supernova to convert a grenade into a short range void blast. That is pretty deadly, especially when buffed by our Verity's Brow. But speaking of that exotic, this is what we'll be using as part of the build, which will then give us increased grenade damage as well as grenade energy back. And if you play it right, you can infinitely throw grenades at groups of ads. But if you're struggling to get your grenade back quickly, then your alternative is the Nezarec Sin, which will guarantee you get those abilities back even quicker, and you shouldn't really ever run out. Or you could just use the Devour bottom tree Voidwalker. But for this build I wanted to make use of the Nova Warp. If you're running Devourer, then you don't really need to use Nezarec Sin because it will be pretty pointless as you'll get enough energy back with the Devourer. But I will give you guys alternative mods and weapons to use after the setup if you don't have some of them, or if you struggle to maintain a fully charged grenade. So moving on to those mods for the helmet, first up is the elemental armaments. This will allow our weapon takedowns from our Void fusion rifles that match our subclass energy type have a chance to spawn an elemental well, and with this we have our linear fusion ammo finder mod. But moving into the gauntlets, we have elemental charge to become charger light when picking up those wells, and because they'll be void we'll get 2 stacks. Now with this we have our champion mods that you may need, and with the build you should be able to adjust your kinetic and heavy for anti-barrier and overload champion mods if you need to swap anything out. For the chest though, we are running extra reserves as your charger light mod, which will give us that chance for special ammo to drop from void damage kills, and the higher stacks we have, a higher chance for ammo to drop, and we will become charger light a lot more than you think, so we should never really run out of ammo. But with this we do have double ammo reserve mods for our fusion rifle. I should also mention that the extra reserves mod does need to be slotted into void elemental armor. However, in the legs we have supercharge to gain an additional 2 stacks of charger light, taking our total stacks to 4, so 2 elemental wells and we'll have those 4 stacks. So essentially a few void kills and a grenade kill will give us those 4 stacks, which then gives us a huge chance for ammo to drop. So you'll see it's kind of like an infinite loop of chaining special ammo and abilities. Now with this mod, slot on your ammo scavenger mod from the artifact. Now in the class we do have elemental ordnance to spawn elemental wells on grenade kills, which will be your main source to become charger light. Next with this though, you want Particle Deconstruction, which is an artifact mod that lets you stack damage with your fusion rifle, which is a 40% damage increase, and stacks on top of other DPS debuffs. And this mod is insane guys, I've not even got this myself yet, but I do know this destroys. So this is the mod you'll want to slot on if and when you get that. And if you think about how crazy the build is already without it in action, then you can only imagine having that on top. Moving on though, the stat you'll want to max out to be the most effective with your abilities is Discipline. If you can maintain good consistent energy without it, then you won't need it. But if that is the case, then you could even go with Recovery and have instead the Reaping Wellmaker mod, where activating your class ability and getting a kill will spawn an elemental well. That is a fantastic alternative. Anyway, the artifact setup is this if anyone is interested. Those are the mods that I currently have. But moving on, your other alternative mod is Font of Might if you want to increase the weapon DPS even more by picking up elemental wells. Although I wouldn't recommend it, it is a 25% damage increase that stacks with other buffs, but you do have to be consistent with the spawns and picking it up at the right time, which to me is just too much effort when you have the artifact mod as well as the exotic trait on top, so it's really just not needed in my opinion. Lastly though, if you are struggling with getting fast grenades, the grenade kickstart mod in stasis armor will be your saviour. So we have the build. What are the alternative weapons to use? Firstly of course, Lorentz Driver is the main weapon that this build is focused around and should be used for this build, but if for some reason you don't use this, then the null fusion rifle will be your second best option. Otherwise any void fusion rifle will do, but if you can't get any, then just any void weapon in general. If you're running a legendary energy, use 1000 Voices as your heavy, as this thing just owns right now with the new artifact mod, but Sleeper Simulant is your other alternative, along with Telesto the besto. Now overall this build is pretty insane in all types of PvE activities, and I'd strongly recommend this initial setup in things like Solo Legend and Master Lost Sectors, Master and maybe even Grandmaster Nightfalls. and perhaps even in raids for DPS. But this build can cause some serious damage and is most effective as an ad clearing build more than a boss DPS build, but it can be used as a mixture of both and you should have a consistent amount of special ammo, hardly ever running out. But guys, that is all for this new PvE Warlock build in Destiny 2 Beyond Light, Season of the Lost. Next you guys should go check out the playlist for more top builds in Destiny 2 Season 15, but for now, give this one a try, let me know what you think, and I'll see you guys in a few days for the next one.